I was already apprehensive about Stranger Things Season 4 before I went in, because if Season 2 hadn't already felt like a conclusive ending, Season 3 definitely did when it killed off Hopper. And I have this thing with TV shows where if I personally think it should have ended by now, then I decide to stop watching it and remain completely oblivious to anything that comes afterwards. I did that with Game of Thrones when they killed off Joffrey. I just went, right, Big Bad is gone, and stopped watching. And I'm told I probably made the right decision. Before now, the only show where I haven't done that is Doctor Who. Sheer off the last few minutes, and Heaven Sent is the perfect final episode. When I found out they were actually making a fourth Stranger Things, my main apprehensions beyond just why were compounded by just how long it took Season 3 to get going. It's 3 years later, and that Season 3 opener still just mystifies me at how an hour of TV can be that empty. And I was going, oh god, I hope that doesn't happen again with this season. Because the previous season had felt so final, it moved the characters to opposite ends of the country, I just knew it would take ages to get going again. And then it got revealed just how stupidly long the runtimes of Season 4 episodes were. 78 minutes. 77 minutes. Okay, 64 minutes, that's kind of normal. Oh Jesus, 98 minutes! Oh god, that finale, 2.5 hours long, are you kidding me? No, genuinely, I haven't made that up. The finale is 2.5 hours long. The news that episodes would be this long got sold to us as every episode being like a movie. But if so, an 80-minute episode needs to be paced like a movie. Most of these episodes aren't. They're essentially just long episodes of a serialised TV show containing about 20 minutes worth of extra scenes that add nothing, and would have been cut out if it weren't for the fact that Netflix aren't constrained by time slots, and Stranger Things is one of the most successful things in the world. I know people are going to get pissy at me for this video because yes, I do agree that like Season 3, 4 is good once it finally gets going. And it gets so fun that you'll mostly forget just how much fucking filler you had to sit through to get there. So cast your minds back to before it picked up the pace. You sat down watching episodes 1, 2 and 3. So, Stranger Things has always structured its episodes as simultaneous groups of action. We see what a combination of characters are doing right now. We might pair Steve with Dustin, Eleven with Mike, Jonathan with Nancy. In Season 1 it will be all the kids together, and we cut between groups of characters as we draw these disparate threads of plot together. But in some cases it can feel like overkill to give equal amounts of time to everyone if what one particular subset of them is doing is just not interesting. Like, at all. Okay, so in episode 1, Eleven is trying to process Hopper's death, losing her powers, and also she's being bullied at high school. Meanwhile, Max is retreating from her friends and struggling to cope with Billy's death. And also she's concerned about a girl visiting a neighbour to buy drugs. These are the important bits of the episode and demonstrate what I've always loved about Stranger Things. The weird crazy monster incidents actually have a heavy emotional impact on our characters. Because in over-the-top monster sci-fi horror, even when characters are killed off, it's quite rare that we go this heavy with it, and show our characters dealing with out-and-out PTSD. That stuff's great. The Mike and Dustin having a hard time fitting in at school and having a domestic dispute with Lucas is not. I understand you've got to set up the Hellfire Club and new character Eddie, who's involved with drugs and witnesses the inciting incident of the season, but these scenes where we do basically nothing but establish who these people are and what's been happening with the nerds at the moment are just so damn long and only serve to make the same point over and over again whenever we cut away from something that's actually interesting and back to the nerds who are basically doing fuck all. At multiple points in the opening episodes I got up and left the room to empty the dishwasher or get a snack, came back, and I hadn't missed much at all. I wasn't lost or confused when the episode got to its closing moments, and when I can do that comfortably, that's when you got a problem. Because if I missed one scene that goes, Lucas is involved with the popular kids who now hate the Hellfire Club, I don't have to worry because there's going to be another scene that showcases that exact same development again in the next episode or in about 20 minutes time. If some exec was looking over the scripts for the opening episodes, if they were written by anyone else for any new intellectual property, they'd draw massive circles around all these scenes of the kids having domestic squabbles that go on for fucking ever and write the words, "In what way does this advance your story?" ? Now, I know the response to this is going to be people holding up a big sign that says the word character. We're exploring what our characters are dealing with as they grow up and go to high school. Similar to the obvious show that it's always been easy to compare Stranger Things to, Buffy, a show about a group of kids going to high school and battling monsters, and there's an evil portal to another realm beneath the town. In Buffy, you were watching the kids grow up and deal with relationships and domestic issues, but a lot of the time it would use the monsters and supernatural goings-on as metaphors or catalysts for personal growth. As well as episodes actually being manageable lengths, it didn't rigidly separate plot and character for large portions of the runtime. In Stranger Things 4, I'm literally just watching Eleven being bullied at school for far too long. I mean, I know it's basically trying to channel Carrie here, because, they're both teenage girls being bullied at school with this whole psychic power thing. But Eleven doesn't have her powers here, so I'm essentially just watching Carrie but without the thing that made Carrie interesting. It's not the existence of the bullying plot thread that's the problem. It's a good idea, especially given where they go with it, which I'll get onto later. But my point is, it doesn't need to take 2 80-minute episodes to get this across. Okay, so Eleven is being bullied at school in episode 1. In episode 2, she's still being bullied at school. And they do this over-the-top on-camera prank thing at the roller rink, which just showcases how much the Duffers have forgotten about how to give bully characters any degree of depth. Why is this girl so mean to Eleven? What is the driver for any of this? I don't know, because this girl essentially vanishes from the story after getting smacked in the face with a rollerblade. She's just nasty, because that's what she is, and we need to get Eleven out of California and to our top secret base so she can get her powers back and do the big showdown thing again. Why is Jason so insistent the Hellfire Club are real devil worshippers? Does he have fundamentalist Christian parents? I basically know nothing about him, other than he needs to be there to be the driver to give Lucas his integrity back after he essentially sells his soul to be in the popular kid's good graces. These people are just plot devices, they're not characters like Steve was back when he was the series bully. You'd think they'd have more time to give these characters more depth given just how long these episodes are. Apparently not. I mean, if we're making the case the show needs to overindulge in things like teenage high school drama in order to be realistic, isn't it odd that Joyce doesn't get given any grief over Hopper to deal with like Eleven does? I got basically no emotion from her at all, and that's not Winona Ryder's fault. At the start of the season, she just gets handed the usual Stranger Things task of investigate a random household object. Winona's great as ever, but it's weird how Hop and Billy's deaths have affected Eleven and Max in realistic and heavy ways, but Joyce is basically just there to carry the plot in this one. Couldn't we have cut one of the far too many scenes of Lucas, Mike and Dustin having high school drama to make room for some Joyce grief? Because then it would feel way more meaningful at the end of episode 7 when she's finally journeyed across the snowy hellscape of the Soviet Union to rescue Hopper. It's not a nothing moment when she finally meets up with him again, because the music is telling me to start feeling things when they hug each other, but just think here, what if we didn't know if Hopper is still alive or not? What if we weren't shown him in all the trailers and it was kept as a surprise when we reveal that he's still alive in Russia in episode 4 or something? There's this scene in episode 2 where Murray shows up and tries to tell Joyce that her babbling about Hopper still being alive is insane, and there's sort of this suggestion that she might be in the denial stage of grief. And I think it would have been interesting if they'd made us question whether she's right or not. Maybe Joyce doesn't believe that Hopper's actually dead and she's going crazy. And then she goes to a psychiatrist who's talking normally and says, yes, well, it does seem that you're in the denial stage of grief. But then the psychiatrist snaps and gets possessed by Vecna and psychologically torments her. You've got this monster that plays on people's vulnerabilities. Why not do that? The bare bones of this idea to use the theory that Hopper's still alive based on very little evidence as a metaphor for Joyce moving through the stages of grief is in these scenes, but at this point we've already been shown that Hopper's still alive in Russia, so there's no real power in any kind of grief storyline that we could have had with Joyce. Winona Ryder is fucking great with emotional strife, just watch season 1 back when her son gets kidnapped. It's powerful stuff, but she's just not given any material relevant to grief to work with here, which you'd think would be the point given what Elle's dealing with in the first couple of episodes. Outside of Eleven making this diorama and getting a bit sniffly over him, it's not treated as if Hopper is actually dead. The show knows it's bringing him back, so do we, and so these scenes don't mean anything. So what was even the point in apparently killing him off in the first place? They killed off 2 characters at the end of Season 3. The key theme of Season 4 should have been grief. That's what Eleven and Max are focused on, but there's no thematic driver for Joyce. I enjoyed watching her journey to rescue Hopper, but I was just frustrated because I could have felt things. I just want to feel something. Anything. Admittedly, they do get thematic grief very right with Max, who's easily the standout of this season. As much as I've been complaining, I did enjoy the dedication this season has to surreal dream sequences. The occasions where what appears to be a normal everyday scene stops and suddenly a character starts confronting someone about their past and goes freaky-eyed are very effective. The show's had Nightmare on Elm Street influences before, but it goes whole hog here by having this monster that's actually got a personality and a quirk where it plays on our character's vulnerabilities. And having Robert Englund actually guest as a character wrongly accused of killing his family was a very nice touch. It works really well with Max, whose guilt is clearly eating away at her. That scene in the finale where she admits that in her darkest moments where Billy was tormenting her growing up that she almost wanted him to die, and then Lucas reacts with absolute horror before revealing he's a Vecna-controlled apparition, was one of the strongest scenes in all of Stranger Things. Vecna's an astonishing creation as well, a monster that plays on people's vulnerabilities as it hunts them and can blur the lines between the real world and the upside down and jump out at you at any moment is a remarkable idea. And he essentially acts as a metaphor for Max's grief over Billy. And the way they've utilised music under this premise as creating a way out of Vecna's realm really works. Hearing your favourite song often provides a moment of catharsis that allows you to push out of your darkest moments, and Running Up That Hill is probably the best 80s song they could have used for this. Unlike in Season 3, they've actually given Stranger Things' indulgence in 80s nostalgia a mechanic that makes it relevant to the story. So yeah, if you're going to get pissy at me for being too negative about this season, there you go. Max's story is done incredibly well, and here is a room full of people giving this stuff a round of applause. There are moments of genius like that in Season 4. I see why everyone's gone nuts for it. The biggest problem I had was the bloat. I don't want to get personal, but a lot of the stuff the Duffers have publicly said in defence of Season 4 have felt a bit fatalist to me. Millie Bobby Brown called them out for not having the guts to kill off that many characters, and in response they said, "We're not Game of Thrones, and it would just get depressing." Which... just what the fuck even is this response? They do kill off characters sometimes, but if they're insisting on adding more characters every season, Max and Billy came on board in Season 2, Robin in Season 3, Jonathan's stoner friend Argyle and Eddie Munson in Season 4, if you add 2 and kill off 1, you've still added 1, and you end up trying to juggle more than you can handle, so obviously some characters are going to come up short. Jonathan was basically a complete non-entity this season. He was a standout in Season 1 where he takes on the stabilising role in a single-parent household rocked by a disappearance. In Season 4, he's basically the designated driver. Oh, and he gets handed like a scene in the finale between him and Will where they stop the episode and go, "So how do you feel, little brother?" "I feel sad sometimes." "So do I." Of course, scheduling and COVID could have been a problem with Charlie Heaton in particular, which might explain his lack of prominence this season, but it's just astonishing to me that having extra runtime didn't really do anything to grant the characters more depth. A lot of the time it amounts to just stopping the episode so characters can do a feelings check. "Hey Nancy, so we're spending more time together this episode, and I'm showing more maturity than I did back in Season 1, aren't I?" "Yes, you are. That's a good thing, isn't it?" "I like you again." "Hey Jonathan, we're going to have a love triangle in Season 5. Cool." Some dead weight does need dropping, and before you guys consider it, it's not Robin, who I really enjoyed this season. She's basically turning into Mabel from Gravity Falls. Even Eddie Munson was more fun than Jonathan, Will and Mike, and the Duffers can't have thought he was going to end up being that interesting if he's essentially this season's only, spoiler warning, disposable kill-off fodder. Because Eddie's proven to be one of the most popular characters this season, even though we barely spend any time with him. He's a tertiary character on the run from the police who then gets absorbed into the main group in the finale. Eddie has a drug problem. He's a bit of an overgrown child who finds making friends with people younger than himself much easier than the grown-ups telling him he's a fuck-up. And also he's really into heavy metal. He's basically me from about 12 years ago. And the Duffers should probably take note of Eddie's popularity because he's become really popular while being killed off. And people aren't depressed about Season 4, they love it. See, if you make us care about a character, obviously it's going to be an emotional gut punch when you kill them off. But people like that gut punch because it makes them feel something. Same with Max, who might not be killed off, but she ends the season with all her limbs broken, blinded and in a coma. Which was sincerely depressing, but did nothing to dampen my positive feelings towards her. Max is the best character in Stranger Things, hands down. The 11 storyline also gets pretty damn good once we get her out of California. Exploring the relationship between Papa and Eleven has been an untapped goldmine for a while. He's been kept as this distant, dangerous figure trapped inside Eleven's traumatic memories, and having her as this powerless test subject essentially trapped in a facility in the middle of nowhere means she has to face her fears and gain the confidence to stand up to her abusive surrogate father figure. and her superpowers are essentially a metaphor for confidence. It's basically Eleven's been bullied at school and she gets sent to therapy to deal with her past, and that helps her stand up for herself. See, this is how you make a character's story thematic. If they'd done that with Joyce this season, then maybe I'd be singing its praises. While I'm on good things, yes, I am being positive enough, shut up. You will drown in my positivity. I really enjoyed the Hopper storyline, if mostly for the pulpy Cold War era story of an American trapped in communist Russia scrabbling desperately for any means of escape with the sinister background presence of upside down elements. It's an interesting change of pace for the show to swap small-town sci-fi horror for what is essentially an 80s action thriller with only the mildest of supernatural elements. Although it can be a bit clunky at times, and it's clearly trying to be more than it is with its gruff "I'm the curse" speech. It's trying to be a case where Hopper has essentially died, and this is him trying to fight his way out of purgatory, which probably would have worked better if anyone back home except from Eleven treated him as if he was actually dead beyond the first couple of episodes where it sort of gets forgotten about. That said, I'm not totally opposed to Stranger Things becoming more of an action-oriented show than a horror one. Season 4 is this visually dazzling, high-stakes, high-scale spectacle, and shows off just how massive the budget must be and how much money the screamingly obvious product placement that's been getting more and more in your face with every season must be raking in. Most of the different strands do move at about the same pace and trip off each other nicely. The scenes of Steve, Nancy, Robin and Eddie traversing the Upside Down sit nicely alongside the Hopper stuff, even if plot-wise they don't really have a whole lot to do with each other. In fact, you probably could separate the Hopper and Joyce stuff out into their own separate series and you wouldn't notice much difference outside the ending scenes. Getting onto the finale, I do know the arguments people are going to make in favour of it being 2.5 hours long immediately. People watch 2.5 hour long movies. I'm not a hypocrite for complaining about that though, because if a movie is 2.5 hours long, I almost always think that's way overindulgent and needs cutting down. Quentin Tarantino movies and Midsommar barely get away with it. Barely. The Duffers have defended the 2.5 hour finale by saying there just wasn't a place to make the splits. To which I can respond with this suggestion. The bit where it looks like Vecna's about to kill Max, Eleven shows up and the music swells. This just does look like an episode break. It comes right in the middle of the episode at about the 75-minute mark. Maybe swap a couple of scenes around and this would work perfectly fine. There are always places to make a split. Entire Stranger Things seasons are styled like long movies anyway. Each set of characters has a start and end point splayed out across the episodes, cut up in places where something shocking happens and then it plays the credits. Viewers have a pause button. Look, what is the point in episodic storytelling if you can't figure out where to make a split? Why not just make Stranger Things 4 a 13-hour movie if episodic splits don't matter? Because hell, viewers have a pause button, right? The point is that you're splitting chapters of your story into manageable chunks that a viewer can sit down, watch, and then stop when they have to go and do something else. Unless of course you're the sort of person who can afford to spend your time on a binge watch. The only possible reason I can think for making the finale 2.5 hours long is showing off just how long it is. Like with the long runtimes of all the episodes this season, which I just wasn't impressed by. Because just not bothering to cut stuff out that doesn't serve any purpose isn't valuable, it's just time wasting. The actual content of the finale is not the problem. Eleven and Max get together in a Vecna dream space for a big epic showdown, and it's this overwhelming barrage of intense and weird imagery. Even if I was thinking while Mike is doing some long speech to give Eleven the power to stand up to Vecna that, wow, Vecna's taking a suspiciously long time to get around to killing Max even though he stood right in front of her. It's almost as if he knows how long Mike's speech is and is timing his killing to match up with it. Okay, like with the rest of the season, it is mostly functionally sound, and it has a nice incline in intensity and stakes to all these scenes, leading up to the point where they set Vecna on fire, at which point the tension breaks and we can deal with the character deaths, or apparent deaths in Max's case. Which was seriously heartbreaking, on a level that the other story strands just couldn't really match. In the last half an hour as we're wrapping up and dealing with the fallout, I did keep thinking, yeah, get this scene over with, more Max. Does she get out of the coma? Can this show just be about Max from now on? So yeah, in conclusion, while I enjoyed it, Season 4 is highly flawed. The good stuff is very good, but if I didn't think Stranger Things was becoming a victim of its own success in Season 3, then I definitely think it is now. Fortunately, they haven't ended it this time by making it look like the show's ended, so I actually am on the edge of my seat for Season 5. And given how this ends, hopefully Season 5 isn't going to take forever to get going in the way 3 and 4 both have done. Anyway, before I let you get on writing your essays in the comment section about why I'm wrong and my head is stupid, I've got a thing to plug. I'm currently holding a crowdfunder for my next short film. It's called Got Your Nose, and it's about a kid whose uncle played Got Your Nose with him when he was very young, and now he's grown up with a psychosomatic disorder where he genuinely believes he has no nose. It sounds like a joke and it's a silly idea, but I decided it would be fun to play it as a serious drama. You can pledge now and get access to a ton of perks to help bring this project to life. Link in the description.